The abandoned storage unit. Hi guys, I wasn't sure where else to come with this, but I've read some pretty messed up stuff on here in the past and you guys have always given me sound advice, so here we go. I'll start from the beginning. My name is John McCabe. I've been a fanatic in storage auctions ever since I saw Storage Hunters and Storage Wars on the TV. I had recently been made redundant from my job as a data processor at an investment banking corporation. I'd been given a lot of money as compensation, and I was looking for some excitement in my life. I'd always been a gambler. I loved to visit the track or the casino, but as I got older, that type of gambling felt, I guess, cheap is the way to describe it. Any wins, although they take some sort of research or skill, it mainly came down to luck. I wanted something that took instinct, knowledge, and maybe a little bit of shrewdness. I wanted to be able to pick something up for next to nothing and sell it for major profit. I could imagine there was no better feeling. I'd gone to around 5 auctions during my brief time as an antiques dealer. The first unit I purchased was my best. I acquired the bin for around $675. I had to outbid a few pushers, but ultimately, I knew a storage bin belonging to a former artist would be worth something, even if it was just to break even. The man I beat in the bidding, whose name was Alan, gave me something of a death stare. It was at this point, I knew I had something good. I found a few nice crochet and needlepoint works, but what blew my bankroll wide open was a box of 51 pieces Dwayne Byers Western artwork. I took everything to a well-established valuer, and she told me it was all worth approximately $22,000. I was over the moon with the profit, and immediately fell in love with the idea of making this my new career. I'd made more money in 1 week than I did in 6 months. I had the bankroll to survive a few bad units, and I just genuinely enjoyed the rush of it all. Plus, I think I had a good eye for this. My next unit I won was pretty much junk. It had previously been owned by a software designer. I thought there may be some motherboards or microprocessing chips, except it was mainly old desk chairs and dirty laundry. Thankfully, after a disappointing afternoon, I discovered a box containing some rare baseball cards and a signed Mickey Mantle baseball. I bought that bin for $600 and I sold it for $900. After that, it was a while before I won at auction again. A few weeks back, I missed out on a real treasure chest. I'd been in a bidding war with another gentleman over a bin belonging to someone who was described as unemployed. I took the view that maybe the owner was a hoarder or had inherited some cash or maybe valuables. However, when the bidding was coming into the 3,000s, I decided it wasn't worth it. Huge mistake. Alan, the pusher who gave me the death stare, won the auction. The owner of this unit had been a bank robber or safecracker or something, and there was a mini vault in there with over $750,000 inside. I felt sick, and the knowledge I'd been 1 or 2 bids away from a huge fine screwed up my decision making over the next few auctions. I bought the next 2 bins for a combined $9,750, and the combined returns were $300. I decided I wasn't going to chase my losses, and I just started fresh. Follow my gut and not the money. That's all I had to do. Which brings me to the unit I just purchased. The things I found in here likely do have a huge amount of value. I just don't know if I want to meet the sort of people who would pay for it. The auctioneer announced that this unit in question was owned by somewhat of a mystery man. According to the paperwork, the person paid for the unit 2 years up front in cash. They left no details or ID, and the name given at the time of the sale was Mr. A. The mystery surrounding the previous ownership of the bin had a buzz among the bidders. Some of the bidders hypothesized the unit could be full of drugs, counterfeited money, or maybe some other sort of organized crime. This caused a few people to drop out of the bidding. Of course, they didn't want to have a big batch of cocaine they couldn't sell. I, on the other hand, fortunately had a few contacts who would gladly take such items off my hands for a discounted rate, in which case, I decided whether or not this unit was illegal or not. It definitely had value. Why else use a fake name? The bidding became fast and furious before you know it. The offers were hitting the $9,000 mark. The sweat was beginning to pour off people's faces, and they ultimately decided they wanted out. Before I knew it, it was down to me and Alan again. Me and him had become somewhat of bidding rivals ever since I won the artwork bin, and he was loving rubbing his $750,000 million profit in my face after the 2 duds I bought. Before I knew it, the bids were into the $14,000 mark. It kept climbing and climbing until finally, his hand stayed down. I was ecstatic at beating him, and I didn't even realize he was smiling. I stopped celebrating long enough to see that they'd cut off the padlock and thrown up the shutter. Then he started howling with laughter at the unit's contents, holding his stomach and shouting, "Yet another shrewd purchase, McCabe, you amateur." I looked at the piles of rusted car parts and the hollowed out chassis of a 1999 Ford Capri. My heart and stomach sank. The entire profit from my artwork bin was now gone. Alan had clearly driven up the sale price. He knew there was nothing in it, and not to mention, the desperation on my face was clear for everyone to see. I was so stupid. Poker face McCabe. The bidders left me alone to go through my new purchase in peace. I closed the shutter door behind me and began to catalog what I had. Few old batteries, $75. 4 brake rotors, $40 a pop, maybe. This was useless, I screamed out loud, to no one in particular. My wife was going to be furious. The revenue from the first unit was going to pay for her kitchen. When she found out I'd blown the money on some buckets of steel and rust worth no more than $500, she would lose her mind. The combination of my wife's anger and Alan's stupid face was more than enough to turn my frustration into seething rage. I slung one of the boxes full of auto scrap to the other side of the room before turning and kicking the vehicle chassis. My toe had a fight with the solid steel, and you guessed it, the steel won. I spun around, cursing, swearing, and then landed on my butt, cradling my foot. I swear I begun to sob, but then I noticed the trunk had popped open. I wasn't sure if it had always been like that, and I just hadn't noticed, or if it was the force from my kick that unlatched it. Either way, this is when my brain started to take over. Why use a fake name if you were just storing car parts? Unless it was a front. I ran to the trunk and lifted it up. Empty. My head fell into my hands fell to my hips, and I looked into the corner of the ceiling, trying to calm myself down. As I exhaled, my vision dropped to a box in the corner of the room. I focused in on a moldy old cardboard box with a crowbar protruding from the top. I looked at it for a few seconds, just looking at it, not really seeing the bigger picture, but then my brain assessed the image. This unit was full of crusty, mold-ridden boxes that were full of rusty old car parts, and yet this crowbar looked brand new. The cogs started turning, and before I knew it, I was grabbing the crowbar and clambering over to the trunk of the car. I looked at the floor of the trunk and analyzed it. That's when I spotted it and began to feel hope again. There were visible scuff marks where the paint had been rubbed away on one of the corners of the inside walls. That's when my heart started to pound. This was it. This whole unit full of rusted crap was nothing but a front. I ran back out into the corridor and found the nearest trash can. I dug my hand in, and amongst a few crinkly chip packets and sticky soda cans, there was a thick, cold piece of metal. I pulled it out and discovered a padlock. It looked pretty new to me, and I couldn't help but grin and shake my head. I dug the crowbar in where it had clearly been forced in prior. I pulled back on the bar, hard. With each jolt, individual thoughts popped into my head about the potential contents. But when the lid had finally popped, I was greeted with a puzzling sight. The space where the space tire would normally go had been completely hollowed out, customized to conceal whatever this all was. I looked down at 3 significant findings: a stack of 5 laptops, a padlocked black toolbox, and a box of DVDs. I flipped the lid back and removed the pull-away compartment, revealing the best thing I'd seen all day. There it was, a wad of cash. I'm not an accountant or anything, but it had to be about $8,000. The 5 laptops alone would go for a combined $4,000. For the first time, I genuinely felt like I could scrap a profit. I began to shift through the rest of the toolbox, which brought me to my next find. A black jiffy bag, which upon inspection contained 5 encrypted dongles. 1 for each laptop, I presumed. Finally, at the bottom of the toolbox was a black book. Inside, I found a lot of information that, quite frankly, I had no idea what to do with. Usernames, passwords, account numbers for cryptocurrencies, membership details, burner numbers, website addresses. Honestly, it was just letters, numbers, and symbols, but I knew this was serious stuff. I came to the rushed conclusion that this guy must have been a drug dealer who used the deep web to sell his gear. Although it didn't make sense not to find any product or traces of said product, what sort of drug dealers would have memberships? My brain connected with my eyes and I looked at the box of DVDs. I stood up carefully and peered into the box. The top layer of DVDs all had words written in black marker pen. I scanned what each of them said. Attic Man, 6419. Good Samaritans, 4719. The Pied Piper, 301019. And Officer Do Good, 221219. I had no idea what these strange titles referred to. I picked these 4 DVDs up and decided to take it home and see what I was dealing with. I pocketed the cash, deciding to give it to my wife. She might go a little easier on me for spending $14,000 on it, maybe. Something struck me as I picked up those DVDs in their plastic sleeves. There were at least 200 discs in that box. Lots of weird titles such as Mason Family Barbecue or Mr. Funny Face and His Xmas Party. Each of them labeled with dates going all the way back to the early 2000s. Something about these titles didn't sit right with me, and I began to hypothesize who on earth would pay so much money for these. I didn't like the answers I was coming up with. Either way, when I got home and found the DVD player, hopefully I would find out.